This is what strategy looks like. But don't mistake this graph for your strategy. This is a result or a symptom of a well-crafted and executed strategy. In this simulation, we will delve deeply into what it takes to implement a strategy. It won't be easy, but will be thrilling, and the years will pass by quickly. Running a firm is a tough business. Each of your competitors will be seeking the same thing you are: market share, margins, and of course, a high stock price. But if you work hard, you can hit it really big and enjoy high margins, market share, and all the fame, while others will crash carrying tons of leftover inventory and a balance sheet that nobody wants. The results are up to you. Some of you may be nervous, and rightfully so. The simulation is part of your MBA capstone. Not to worry. If you follow these steps and note the details, you'll be highly competitive. I've made a list here under Getting Started. First, log into CAPSIM if you haven't already done so, and subscribe using the industry code provided. And browse around the dashboard area and get acquainted with the site navigation. Complete the 3 training videos. They take about 1 to 2 hours. The first 2 are a little bit lengthy, and the last one only takes about 5 or 10 minutes. And then study the user guide and the market conditions report. The user guide is going to tell you about how the system works, how the processes work. It'll talk about your strategy and how to define your segments. The market conditions report is going to talk about the circumstances that you have to operate in, the size of the markets, the size of the segments, their growth rates, and pertinent information in terms of your planning. And then decide upon who is going to be leading each one of the 4 roles: research and development, marketing, production, and finance. For 4-member teams that we have, 1 person will handle each role. But if you have 5 or 6 members in your teams, 1 or 2 extra people will serve as liaisons between your team and the functional roles of others, and perhaps serve as a sounding board for some of the decision-making you want to do within that role. The 2 reports I just mentioned, the user guide and the market condition reports, are very important to understand. When you study these reports, the user guide is going to really set the stage for the business you're going to be involved in. It shows you the potential markets and their individual segments, the business environment, and your chosen strategy. It's going to show you how to make decisions throughout the game, when to make your selections, and then what to look for in the reports that follow each year. It'll also show you how your team performed utilizing the balanced scorecard in addition to all the other financial information. The market conditions report sets the stage also for what the market is, particularly the consumer preferences for the products you're offering and the product characteristics. So you'll have to make trade-offs between what kinds of product characteristics versus what the consumer prefers versus the financial limitations you have in terms of scarcity of resources. You'll talk about things like the customer buying criteria, what's important to them, times the speed, the age, or the service life of the products you're producing. You'll also consider drift rates, or how the market evolves over time, and market segments over time. Finally, you'll talk about operating costs in different locations. You'll talk about currency exchange rates and perhaps shipping. After studying these 2 guides and what it means to be an R&D manager or a finance manager, right, then it's time to decide who's going to direct each of the 4 roles you have. Be prepared to actively engage in the practice rounds we're going to hold shortly. Soon, we're going to be entering the practice round phase. We do this so that you get a chance to try out the system with no risk. Each round represents an annual business cycle. And play includes designing, marketing, producing, and funding the business by making choices, and then running what-if scenarios based on a pro forma estimate of what might happen. Each functional manager first loads in their decisions, and we do it in a proper order, starting with R&D, then moving to marketing, and then moving to production, and then finally, financing. These managers load their decisions of the previous managers, makes their selections, and then uploads their decisions to the simulation. If you notice on the chart here, it says data recalculated in green on the upper right-hand corner. That's the location where you can actually download the decisions from the prior functional manager, make your corrections to the state of the data as it stands, and then upload your decisions for the next functional manager to be able to proceed. rounds will automatically turn according to a published schedule, at which time then you can see the results of your decisions and how your moves and the moves of your competition affected your results. Examine your results and the moves of your competitors and then repeat. You should note that all simulation years will take place during our weekend residencies. Here you can see on this slide we have our schedule of rounds. On the top half we have our practice rounds. You can see here that we're going to open up the practicing midweek right before our first residency. And then on Sunday during our first residency we're going to have 2 or 3 rounds we'll practice with. No risk, just to see how the system works. I'll guide you through each one of those rounds as we go through the afternoon. And then during our second residency, both days we're going to have 6 full rounds of simulations. The first day is going to be our local simulation, which means we sell to and market in and produce in a single country. The second day in the morning, we'll restart the simulation and we'll run another 6 rounds in a global environment. And what's the difference? In the global environment, you can choose which country you want to produce in, and you can also choose which countries you want to sell to, including the production country. So we crank it up a notch when we get to the second round. I'd like to point out that during your first round, there's a very important decision to make, and that's where to locate your factory. The first round is the only chance you're going to have to choose a production location, whether that be China, Germany, or the United States. So you really need to study the market conditions in advance in order to make the best possible choice. Your production country cannot be changed at any time during the simulation. And most likely, your production location will be chosen based on your strategy. So be careful to consider your chosen strategy and the markets in order to select the most promising location. For example, based on consumer preferences, shipping costs, labor costs, exchange rates, segment size, etc. And this is going to require extensive team collaboration with all members on your team. So here we are in an example to start us off with, an example of R&D. How do we make decisions? Keep in mind that this firm that you're running now is accepted the reins from an existing firm that was running and split off into 6 different companies. Each company has 1 product, 1 set of sales, 1 set of resources. Everybody is on equal footing. So here we're going to start with the R&D function, and that is how to make decisions in R&D. I'd like to point you in the direction of the user guide here. On page number 9 of the user guide here, you can see there's a description here. How do we make decisions? In research and development, you're in charge of designing the product to meet the customer preferences, right? So you're creating new products to meet the customer demands, managing existing products to keep them relevant in the marketplace, right? And retiring products that may not be useful anymore, at least for in the markets you're serving. And so how does this all work? Well, the basis of everything is how much value do we create and deliver to the customer. And so you can see here at the bottom here, the customer buying criteria is one of the most important areas there. How do we mobilize that in our simulation? Well, we have a few levers we can pull. We can take a look at the speed of the medical diagnostic tests we're producing. We can take a look at their accuracy in terms of how well they're diagnosing, right? And we can also take a look at the durability of the products or the service life of the products, mean time between failure. Speed and accuracy are quite related to what's going on today in terms of these COVID tests, right? How fast can you get a test is one of the factors versus the accuracy of those tests. Some of the tests are more accurate than others, right? And so it's the same set of decisions we're actually implementing here in our simulation. Turning to the next page here, you can see there's some ways on point number 7. You can add attention and market focus by establishing a region kit. A region kit is going to basically buy you a 10% boost in demand because you're tailoring your product to a very specific market. Perhaps it's special marketing, it's special packaging, or customized delivery mechanisms to get your product out. Basically, a region kit will produce your demand by 10%, but it's going to cost you, right? Also, other factors play a role in how you design your product. If you leave your product sit and don't make any changes, it's going to age every year, right? Meanwhile, though, the world is growing, the world is getting more sophisticated, and time is passing, right? So some markets may prefer freshly updated products or require freshly updated products every year in order to be successful, while other markets, for example, low-cost operators or cost-conscious consumers, may not worry if the product is this year's or last year's model. They may let it sit for 3 years before they expect some kind of an update in it, right? And so your choices are going to be trade-offs based on all these things here. One of the ways we can visually look at those trade-offs are with the perceptual map that was mentioned a little bit earlier, right? On the bottom of this chart here in your user guide, you're going to see the ideal spot, point number 15 here, right? As close as you can bring your two main coordinates of accuracy and speed to the customer's expectations, the better your sales are going to be. All of these involve trade-offs, right? Having the exact precise accuracy and the exact precise speed every year, you kind of have to plan for, and that will require revisions and retooling in the factory, and you'll incur costs for some of those. So everything is going to be a trade-off in terms of all your decision making. When you go through your examples, you'll see, after you design it, you'll see a pro forma or a forecast of what the product's going to cost. And from there, that goes up the chain and gets implemented with the marketing folks, so they know what kind of product you're building that they can market. The production folks, how long it's going to take them to produce the product, right? And then the finance folks have to decide, can we pay for all this? What are the resources we have available to us? How do we get new resources to fund growth and development in products or not? And so all of that will result in then your final results at the end of every year. And then you'll get your results, how close to the market you were, how further from the market you were, how much you produced or how much you didn't produce for the market, if you had any stockouts or customers asking for products that weren't available. All of these things will come into play and wind up becoming part of your report. Your market report at the end of every round will include your sales, your income or loss, your inventory levels, your cost of labor. Many factors will be presented to you so you can make decisions from, so that you can do a better job when you go into the simulation for the next year, just like it happens in the real world. Each year, there's going to be ongoing challenges. You're going to have stockouts where you don't have enough product to sell. Other times, you may have a boatload of unsold inventory, which results in probably an emergency loan. Each year will likely present a different situation. The learning will come from the way you adapt to your own circumstances. You'll definitely need all hands on deck. So that brings us to the end, right? How do you end the game? Well, my recommendation is to sell as if you're going to sell the company. Earnings matter. Don't try to game the system in the final round. The market does not know your intentions or whether the simulation will end. The final round can dramatically change the standings. Don't take your foot off the gas pedal. For those of you who are interested in knowing, we're going to go over the questions for projects number 3 and 4 in advance of our simulation during our second residency. So you'll know what to look for, where to find your information, and what is expected in your simulations. Before the first simulation actual round, each team will research and report on those answers for the benefit of the entire class. And during our session, you'll report on what you found, where to find it, so everybody knows how to answer all 10 questions for each of the projects. Both projects will be due in 1 week. Some final thoughts and reminders. Each of you are fully interdependent on each other. That's how business works. Everyone should weigh in and fully understand and back your chosen strategy at the onset. This should consider the market, the production locations, and the overall strategy type. So then follow this decision-making cycle: R&D, marketing, production, and then finance. At the end of every round, review your reports carefully. Your initial years will help you focus on meeting your own target market needs successfully. Later years, after you've got that under your belt, may require a closer examination of your competition and how their moves are affecting your outcomes.